The first $100,000 is the son of a bitch. That's not elegant, it's just the truth. Everyone dreams about millions. They talk about stocks, real estate, crypto, startups. But until you get your first 100,000, you're not even in the game. You're just pretending. Why is it so hard? Because you start with nothing, and nothing compounds to nothing. It's like trying to push a heavy boulder from a dead stop. Once it's rolling, momentum helps. But at the beginning, it feels impossible. I know because I lived through it. I was born in 1924, right into the Great Depression. My family wasn't poor by choice. We were poor because the whole country was flat broke. My grandfather went bankrupt. My father lost clients. I grew up seeing what financial weakness looks like. It looks like desperation. And I decided early on I'd rather go through life with money than without it. But here's the catch. To get that first 100,000, you have to behave in ways that most people won't. You have to save when it feels pointless. You have to invest when the numbers look trivial. You have to ignore the urge to copy your neighbor who just bought a shiny new car on credit. When you're young, $1,000 feels like a lot. You save it and it earns $20 in a year. You think, this is useless. That's why most people give up. They'd rather buy a toy today than plant a seed for tomorrow. But the joke is on them, because those small sums, disciplined over years, become something formidable. Once you cross 100,000, the compounding engine finally starts working in your favor. 10% on 100,000 is 10,000. Suddenly the returns are visible. Suddenly the effort feels worth it. Most people never get there, not because they can't, but because they're impatient, stupid, or both. They want shortcuts. They gamble in casinos. They speculate in hot stocks. They think wealth comes from brilliance. It doesn't. It comes from surviving long enough for compounding to do the heavy lifting. I'll give you a blunt metaphor. Making your first 100,000 is like digging through wet cement with a spoon. Miserable, slow, backbreaking. After that, it's like slicing through butter with a hot knife. The texture changes. The irony is that the habits you need to reach 100,000 are the same habits that make you rich. Live below your means. Save like a pessimist. Invest like an optimist. Ignore the idiots. It's not complicated, but it is hard. I once said, nobody can help you if you don't save. And I meant it. If you spend everything you earn, there's no investment genius that will rescue you. Not Buffett, not me, not God. The whole secret is this: be slightly less stupid than the average person. Don't envy, don't overspend, don't borrow too much, don't chase hot tips. Do that long enough, and your first 100,000 will come, and then the next 100,000 will come faster. And faster after that. When I was a young lawyer, I didn't make much. But I kept saving. I bought a few stocks. I lived simply. I didn't buy things to impress people I didn't care about. Eventually, my pile grew. The discipline of those early years carried me the rest of my life. Here's the real kicker. I'm not saying 100,000 makes you rich. It doesn't. But it proves you're capable of discipline. And discipline is the rarest commodity in the world. If you're under 40 and broke, don't despair. But don't kid yourself either. You need to save until it hurts. You need to sacrifice. You need to look your friends in the eye when they laugh at your cheap habits and know you'll outlast them. Because in the end, the compounding machine doesn't reward the cleverest. It rewards the stubborn. That's the paradox of wealth. The beginning is unbearable. The middle is tolerable. The end is inevitable. The first 100,000 is hell. But if you get through it, you'll wonder why everyone else is still stuck at zero. So the question is simple. Are you willing to suffer now so you don't suffer later? If you want to guarantee your own misery, start comparing yourself to other people. That's envy. And envy is the dumbest sin of them all. Why? Because it's the only one where you don't get a damn thing out of it. Gluttony, you get a good meal. Lust, you get some temporary pleasure. Greed, you might end up richer. But envy, you just feel miserable that someone else has more. It's like lighting yourself on fire to spite your neighbor. When I was young, I watched envy destroy lives. A lawyer I knew, brilliant man, worked harder than anyone couldn't stand that other lawyers were getting richer faster. Instead of sticking to his practice, he jumped into every hot deal and stock craze he could find. He wasn't trying to make money, he was trying to beat the guy next to him, and he lost his shirt. That's how envy works. It blinds you. It makes you chase things you don't even want just because someone else has them. It makes you play games where you have no edge, and eventually it makes you broke. Buffett and I never wasted time envying others. We admired some, we learned from some, but envy? Never. What would be the point? If someone's got a yacht bigger than mine, good for him. I don't want the damn yacht anyway. Here's the irony. The more you compare, the less you'll actually save. Because envy drives consumption. Your neighbor gets a new car. Suddenly your old car feels inadequate. Your friend takes a trip to Europe. Suddenly you think you deserve one too. And there goes your savings rate. People ask me all the time how to get rich. I tell them, stop trying to look rich. Stop trying to impress idiots. The world is full of fools spending money they don't have to show off to people they don't even like. You want to join them? Fine. But don't whine when your net worth is zero. You know who doesn't get rich? The guy keeping up with the Joneses. You know who does? The guy who quietly keeps piling up his money while the Joneses drown in debt. The numbers don't lie. If you save $10,000 a year for 10 years, you'll have a pile that can compound. If you waste $10,000 a year trying to look rich, you'll have memories and credit card bills. Which one do you want? I'll give you a personal confession. When I was starting out, there were plenty of people in Los Angeles richer than me. They had nicer houses, fancier parties, flashier lives. I didn't envy them. Because I knew most of them weren't really rich, they were leveraged. They looked like kings until the tide went out. And when it did, they were exposed as paupers in expensive suits. That's the lesson. Envy not only makes you stupid, it makes you fragile. You take risks you shouldn't. You spend money you don't have. You build a house of cards hoping it will impress people who aren't paying attention anyway. The cure is simple. Stop comparing. Think like an owner, not a consumer. Care about your own pile, not your neighbor's, because the world doesn't care how you look. It only cares what you can withstand when the storm comes. If you can kill envy, you'll save more. If you save more, you'll hit that first 100,000 faster. And if you hit that first 100,000, you'll laugh at all the people still trying to keep up appearances. So the next time you feel envy, remember this. It's the only sin where you don't even get to enjoy the sin. All pain, no reward. You can do better than that. The truth is, envy is free poison, and most people drink it daily. Don't be one of them. You don't get to 99 years old without making some very stupid mistakes. And I've made plenty. One of the biggest, I sold too early. It sounds small, it sounds harmless, but it probably cost me more money than all my other mistakes combined. Here's the story. Decades ago, I bought into a company at a cheap price. I liked it, the business was sound, the people running it were honest, and the economics made sense. But when the stock doubled, I thought I was clever. I sold, I patted myself on the back. The company went on to multiply tenfold, maybe 20-fold. I don't even want to calculate it anymore. That little act of impatience trying to look smart by taking profits probably cost me tens of millions, maybe more. That's the problem with being too eager. Most people think the hard part of investing is buying. It isn't. The hard part is sitting while nothing happens. Sitting while everyone else is jumping in and out. Sitting while the world screams at you to do something. Buffett always says his favorite holding period is forever. That's not poetry. It's rationality. If you find something great, why would you let it go just because it's gone up a little? Selling a great business too early is like selling a winning horse halfway through the race. Sure, you lock in a little profit, but you give up the real fortune. I learned that lesson the hard way. It scarred me, and it made me much slower to sell after that. It's funny because most of the big mistakes people make are symmetrical. They either hold garbage too long or they sell greatness too soon. Both come from the same disease impatience. When I look back, I don't regret missing some wild speculation. I don't regret skipping tech fads I didn't understand. What I regret are the moments when I owned something good and I was too eager to clip the ticket and run. That's a mistake you don't forget. And I've been reminding young people ever since, if you're lucky enough to find a wonderful business, don't be in a hurry to part with it. Those are rare. And compounding needs time more than anything else. Here's the irony. The same stupidity that cost me millions has made other people poor. The average investor buys at the top, sells at the bottom, and repeats until broke. They can't sit still. Their attention span is shorter than a goldfish. If you want to beat 90% of investors, here's the dirty secret. Just sit. Sit on your savings, sit on your investments, sit on your hands, do nothing most of the time. The world is full of hyperactive idiots trying to outsmart each other. Don't join them. I once said, the big money is not in the buying or the selling, but in the waiting. And it wasn't a clever line, it was a scar talking. So if you want to avoid my mistake, remember this. Activity is the enemy. Stillness is your friend. Don't be too smart for your own good. If you find yourself itching to sell just because the price is higher than yesterday, slap yourself. Ask, has the business changed? Or is it just my brain looking for dopamine? Most of the time the answer is, it's your brain. And if you ignore that itch, you might save yourself from the most expensive mistake of all, the one that keeps you comfortable but robs you of fortune. The truth is, my impatience made me rich slower than I could have been, but at least I learned the lesson. The question is, will you? The world is full of people absolutely certain about things they know nothing about. It's the default human condition, ignorance mixed with overconfidence, a toxic cocktail. I've watched people go broke not because they lacked intelligence, but because they had too much confidence in lousy opinions. They couldn't say 3 simple words, I don't know. When I was young, I thought smart people had answers. As I got older, I realized the real smart ones were the people who admitted ignorance quickly. The faster you can say, I don't know, the richer and wiser you'll probably become. Take investing. The average person reads a headline about oil or tech or interest rates, and suddenly they're an expert. They rush into trades with conviction they haven't earned. And when it blows up, they act surprised. What did they expect? That the world would reward arrogance dressed up as insight? Buffett and I have been successful largely because we've stuck to areas where we actually know something. If we don't understand it, we pass. We've ignored 99% of all opportunities. People think that's a weakness. It's not. It's survival. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know when you know something and when you don't. That simple humility will keep you from the graveyard of overconfident fools. There's a saying, an investor needs to do very few things right as long as he avoids big mistakes. Most big mistakes come from being too sure of yourself. That's why I've spent my life preaching the gospel of doubt. I'll tell you a little story. Years ago, a man pitched me a hot deal. He spoke with absolute certainty, charts, projections, the whole circus. I told him I didn't understand the economics. He looked at me like I was an idiot. A few years later, his business collapsed. He lost everything. My only regret was not telling him bluntly enough that he was full of it. Here's the brutal truth. Confidence is cheap. Anyone can project it. Knowledge is expensive. It takes years of study, scars, and humility. Most people choose the cheap version. They pay the price later. Psychologists call it the Dunning-Kruger effect. I call it being stupid, not knowing it. The dumbest people in the room are often the loudest, and the smartest people are usually the ones asking the most questions. So, how do you protect yourself? By building what I call a circle of competence. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know the boundaries of what you know and refuse to step outside them. Most people don't like boundaries. They think they're limiting. But in investing, limits are liberating. They keep you safe. They prevent you from wandering into territory where the sharks eat amateurs for breakfast. The problem is, ego gets in the way. People want to look smart, they want to impress, they want to predict the future like they've got a crystal ball. That's why financial television exists. It feeds on overconfident opinions. But if you think watching CNBC makes you informed, you're already doomed. I'll put it plainly. If you can't say, I don't know, at least 10 times a day, you're probably deluding yourself. And if you build an investment portfolio based on delusion, you'll eventually get slaughtered. Buffett likes to say, we don't have to be smarter than the rest. We have to be more disciplined than the rest. Discipline means sticking to what you know, ignoring what you don't, and admitting ignorance fast. The irony is, humility makes you stronger, not weaker. Saying, I don't know, won't cost you anything. Pretending you do, that'll cost you everything. So here's the question. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be rich? Most people spend their whole lives thinking like employees. That's why they never get rich. Careerism is the disease of our age. You see it in law, medicine, corporate life. People climb ladders, polish resumes, and chase titles. They live for approval of bosses, clients, institutions, and they wake up at 65 wondering why they have nothing to show for it but a pension and a gold watch. I know, because I started that way. I was a young lawyer in Los Angeles. I billed hours, I collected fees, I tried to impress partners, and one day it hit me, if I kept at it, I'd be comfortable but never wealthy. I'd be trading time for money until I dropped dead. So I quit. People thought I was crazy. Why give up a stable career, they asked. Because stability is an illusion, and because being a careerist means you're always dancing to someone else's tune. The real money, the enduring money, comes from ownership. Owning a business, owning equity, owning assets that work for you while you sleep. Buffett understood this instinctively. He didn't want a salary. He wanted ownership. That's why we bought companies instead of chasing promotions. That's why Berkshire Hathaway isn't a job, it's a machine we own. Careerists think in terms of pleasing a boss. Owners think in terms of building something that lasts. Careerists ask, how do I get ahead this year? Owners ask, how do I make this pile of capital work for decades? The questions couldn't be more different. The irony is, careerism feels safer. The paycheck shows up every 2 weeks. The boss pats you on the head. But the long-term math is brutal. Inflation eats your wages. Bureaucracy caps your upside. And one corporate reshuffle can erase your security overnight. Ownership, by contrast, feels risky. You put your own money at stake, you take responsibility, there's no safety net, but the upside is uncapped. You reap the compounding, you build independence. You stop begging for raises and start making your own rules. Most people never make the switch. They stay in careerist mode until the grave. They cling to stability like a life raft, never realizing it's tied to a sinking ship. I'll give you a blunt example. In my law days, the richest lawyers weren't the ones billing the most hours. They were the ones taking equity in their clients' businesses. The careerists slaved away for fees. The owners collected fortunes. And so, some talent, different mindset, that's the lesson. Careerism rewards you with breadcrumbs. Ownership rewards you with compounding. Now, don't misunderstand me. Not everyone can or should start a business. Most businesses fail. But everyone can own something. A share of a company, a piece of real estate, an asset that works without your constant labor. That's ownership thinking. The key is to stop thinking like a hired gun and start thinking like a capitalist. Ask yourself, am I building an asset or am I just selling my hours? If it's the latter, you're stuck. If it's the former, you're on the path to freedom. Buffett and I never envied careerists. They got applause, we got equity. In the long run, equity beats applause every time. So here's the rule. If you want to be rich, Stop polishing your resume and start building your balance sheet. Titles fade, ownership compounds, and compounding, not career climbing, is what gets you the first 100,000 and every 100,000 after that. I was born in 1924. That means I grew up during the Great Depression. And let me tell you, there's no better education and money than watching a whole society run out of it. My grandfather went bankrupt. My father, a lawyer, struggled to keep clients who couldn't pay. People I knew lost farms, homes, dignity. If you wanted a lesson in fragility, you didn't need a classroom, you just needed to look out the window. The first thing the Depression taught me, money equals survival. Not yachts, not private jets survival. When cash dries up, you see how quickly respectable families crumble. Men who once walked tall suddenly lined up for bread. Women patched clothes until they were more thread than fabric. Kids worked before they hit puberty. It burned into me a permanent rule. Never be dependent on the kindness of strangers, governments, or creditors. Depend on your own savings. Because when the tide goes out, nobody's coming to rescue you. The second lesson, avoid debt like the plague. Debt killed more people's fortunes than the stock market did. In the 30s, families with no debt got by. Families with debt went under. I saw it happen again in the financial crisis of 2008. Same disease, same outcome. People borrowing against houses they couldn't afford, then crying when it all collapsed. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The third lesson, resilience beats brilliance. Plenty of smart people went broke in the Depression because they were leveraged, proud, or both. The survivors weren't always geniuses, they were just conservative. They saved, they stayed liquid. They didn't risk everything on being right. Buffett and I grew up shaped by that era. It made us allergic to debt, skeptical of easy money, and obsessed with durability. That's why we always say, we don't want to go back to go. One wipeout can undo decades of progress. The Depression proved that. The fourth lesson, human misery is contagious. In the 30s, desperation spread like a virus. Suicides, divorces, breakdowns, they multiplied as people's finances collapsed. I learned early that money problems don't stay in the bank account. They bleed into families, marriages, and health. That's why financial discipline isn't just about wealth, it's about sanity. Now, here's the irony. The Depression made me cautious, but it also made me optimistic. Why? Because I watched America climb out of it. I saw recovery, rebuilding, growth. That taught me another vital rule. Capitalism works if you give it time. So I came out of that period with two seemingly opposite beliefs. Always expect hardship and always believe in eventual recovery. That's not contradiction, it's balance. Pessimism protects you. Optimism enriches you. Together they keep you alive and compounding. Most people never learn those lessons. They get comfortable in good times, reckless in booms, panicked in busts, and they repeat the cycle until they die broke. I had no interest in repeating it. That's why I saved aggressively from the start. That's why I stayed conservative with debt. That's why I built a margin of safety into everything I touched. The Depression wasn't an academic case study for me. It was a childhood reality. And reality, if you pay attention, teaches you more than any classroom. So here's the blunt truth. If you want to prepare for the future, learn from the past. Live as if another depression could come tomorrow, but invest as if prosperity will return in time. That paradox is the only way to stay sane and solvent. And if you think it can't happen again, you're the kind of fool history loves to humiliate. If you want to stay poor, it's easy. Load up on debt, surround yourself with fools, and add a little drama to your daily life. That cocktail has ruined more people than the stock market ever did. I made a different choice. I cut those three poisons out early. First, debt. I already told you what the Great Depression taught me. Debt is a noose. You may not feel it tightening at first, but it always does. Credit card balances, payday loans, Margin accounts, different names, same trap. Most people go broke, not because they never made money, but because they owed more than they could carry. Buffett and I never wanted that. We built Berkshire without the kind of leverage Wall Street loves. That's why we sleep well at night. If you need debt to make your plan work, your plan sucks. It's that simple. Second drama. You'd be surprised how many intelligent people ruin their lives chasing chaos. Bad marriages, foolish lawsuits, toxic partners. They spend their energy on soap operas instead of compounding. I had my share of tragedy. I buried a child. I lost an eye. I got divorced. Life handed me enough real drama. I had no appetite for manufactured drama. That's why I cut it out wherever I could. Don't pick fights. Don't sue unless you absolutely must. Don't waste time on people who drain you. Life is hard enough without volunteering for extra misery. Third, dumb people. This one is underrated. Who you spend time with will determine 90% of your outcomes. If you invest with idiots, work for idiots, or marry idiots, you'll pay dearly. The world is full of people who are unreliable, dishonest, or simply stupid. If you can't spot them, you'll suffer with them. Buffett and I had a rule. We only wanted to deal with people we liked, admired, and trusted. No exceptions. We passed on plenty of opportunities just because the people running them were jerks or clowns. Was that costly? Maybe in the short term, but in the long run it saved us from headaches and disasters. It's remarkable how much easier life gets when you simply refuse to mix with toxic people. The same goes for friends. You don't need many. A few rational, trustworthy companions will do. The rest, dead weight. Cut 'em loose. People think I'm exaggerating when I say this, but avoiding debt, drama, and dumb people has been more important to my success than finding genius investments. Because even the best investments won't save you if your personal life is a circus. Look around. Half of America's problems could be solved if people stop buying crap they don't need, stop dating lunatics, and stop taking advice from idiots. But that requires discipline, and discipline is rare. So here's the Munger prescription. 1. Don't borrow what you can't repay. Hi. Don't create problems you don't need. 3. Don't associate with fools. Do those 3 things and you'll already be ahead of 90% of humanity, and you'll have the peace of mind to let compounding work for you instead of constantly fighting fires. Because money isn't the only thing that compounds. Trouble does too. Most partnerships in business fail. They end in lawsuits, betrayals, or sheer exhaustion. Mine with Warren Buffett lasted more than 60 years. That wasn't luck, it was design. Here's why it worked. First, we trusted each other completely. Not half-heartedly, not with fine print. If Warren told me something, I believed it. If I told him something, he believed it. No hidden agendas, no games. That kind of trust is rare. And it saved us from the poison that ruins most partnerships, suspicion. Second, we were complementary. Warren is more optimistic. I'm more skeptical. He sees opportunity, I see danger. Together we balance each other out. Alone, we might have been good. Together we were much better. Third, we agreed on fundamentals. We both hated debt. We both valued patience. We both believed in owning great businesses for the long haul. When you agree on principles, you don't waste time fighting about tactics. People assume we never disagreed. Wrong. We argued plenty, but we argued productively. If Warren thought something was worth doing and I thought it was stupid, I said so. If he convinced me, we did it. If he didn't, we didn't. No hurt feelings, no ego contests, just logic. That's how rational people operate. What didn't work? Well, we weren't perfect. We were both too slow to buy certain companies. We missed plenty of opportunities in technology because we didn't understand them. And sometimes being too cautious made us late. That's the price of our temperament. But it's a price I'll gladly pay. Better to miss a few big winners than blow up entirely. That's what most investors don't understand. They envy the guy who bought Amazon in 1997. They forget about the 100 guys who bought Pets.com in 1999. Another thing that didn't work. We weren't always right about people. A few times we trusted managers who turned out to be disappointing. It happens. You can't avoid it entirely. But we avoided it enough to survive. That's what matters. Here's the deeper truth. Our partnership worked because it was about more than money. It was about shared values. We liked the same jokes, the same books, the same ideas about life. If your only bond with someone is profit, don't expect it to last. People always ask me, how do I find a Buffett? My answer, don't. First be worthy of one, then maybe you'll attract someone equally rational. If you're unreliable, selfish, or lazy, no Buffett in the world will stick around. Buffett and I both had plenty of chances to betray each other. We never did. That's the ultimate secret. Integrity. Without it, partnerships rot. With it, they endure. The irony is everyone wants a magic formula, but the formula is boring. Pick a trustworthy partner, agree on principles, balance each other's strengths, and don't be a jerk. Simple, but not easy. That's why most fail. In the end, our partnership wasn't about maximizing returns, it was about minimizing mistakes. We didn't need to be geniuses. We just needed to avoid being stupid together for a very long time. And if you think that sounds unglamorous, you're right, but it worked. People love to imagine Buffett and me as masterminds who carefully plotted our way to billions. That's nonsense. I never planned to be a billionaire, I just overshot. The truth is simpler and less glamorous. I tried to save, I tried to invest rationally, and I tried to avoid doing stupid things. That's it. The rest was time and compounding. Most people can't accept that. They want a secret formula. They want shortcuts, tricks, hacks. Sorry, there aren't any. The formula is so dull, most people refuse to use it. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference in something sensible, let compounding do its work, and wait longer than everyone else. Do that for 50 years, and you'll look like a genius, but you won't feel like one along the way. You'll feel bored, you'll feel behind, you'll feel like the world is passing you by. That's why most people fail. They can't tolerate boredom. I didn't get rich because I was smarter than everyone. I got rich because I was more stubborn than everyone. I could endure years of sitting, waiting, and ignoring the noise. It's not brilliance, it's endurance. And when the numbers got big, I didn't let them change my behavior. I lived simply. I drove modest cars. I didn't try to keep up with rich neighbors. I didn't need a yacht to feel successful. I just needed peace of mind. That's another paradox. You don't get rich by acting rich. You get rich by acting boring. You save when it's hard. You avoid debt when it's tempting. You sit still when it's uncomfortable. Then one day people look at you and say, wow, how did he do it? I'll tell you how. I didn't blow it, that's all. I've said it before, if you avoid the big mistakes, the rest takes care of itself. You don't need to swing at every pitch. You don't need to predict the future. You just need to survive, let compounding work, and not screw up your own life. That's why I laugh when people ask me for motivational advice. Motivation fades. Discipline lasts. If you can build a system that makes saving automatic, stupidity hard, and compounding inevitable, you don't need inspiration. You need patience. So, yes, I became a billionaire. But I never aimed for it. I just aimed for survival, rationality, and a decent night's sleep. The billions came as a byproduct. And here's the punchline. Overshooting is better than undershooting. If you save too much, nobody complains. If you save too little, it's a tragedy. I didn't overshoot because I was greedy. I overshot because I didn't want to depend on anyone else. That simple paranoia about independence made me richer than I ever imagined. So if you want a formula, here it is. Don't aim to be rich. Aim not to be stupid, not to be dependent, not to be fragile. Do that long enough and you might just overshoot too. People always want me to give them a magic trick. But the truth is insultingly simple. If you're not spending less than you earn, I can't help you. Nobody can. Doesn't matter how smart you are. Doesn't matter what stock tips you get. If the money leaves your pocket faster than it comes in, you're finished. That's arithmetic, not philosophy. You can't out-invest stupidity in spending. You can't compound what doesn't exist. The first 100,000 is hard precisely because it forces you to live below your means. And if you can't do that, forget the rest. I've seen brilliant people ruined because they couldn't grasp this. Lawyers, doctors, CEOs, it doesn't matter. They made millions and spent millions and won. They thought their high incomes would save them. The graveyard of rich fools is crowded. Buffett and I didn't get rich by being flashy. We got rich by being consistent. We lived like people who understood subtraction, money in, less money out, year after year. That gap, the savings, is where compounding lives. Kill the gap, kill your future. It sounds harsh, but it's liberating because it means you don't need genius. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need luck. You just need to master one boring principle: spend less than you earn. Every year, without exception. Most people won't do it. They'll whine about inflation, about unfair systems, about bad luck, and sure, the world isn't fair. But discipline works even in unfair worlds, especially in unfair worlds. So if you want advice, here it is. Stop looking for magic. Stop envying your neighbors. Stop chasing shortcuts. Focus on the basics. Save, invest, sit, repeat. It won't feel good at first. It won't feel impressive. Nobody will clap for you when you put a few dollars aside instead of buying a new gadget. But one day you'll cross that first 100,000 and you'll understand, because the day you get there, compounding finally turns from theory into reality. The boulder starts rolling downhill instead of uphill. The machine works for you instead of against you. And you'll realize the hardest part wasn't the math, it was the discipline. So let me leave you with this. The first 100,000 is hell, but it's also the only real test. If you can get there, the rest will follow. If you can't, no strategy, no guru, no market miracle will save you. It's not glamorous advice, but it's the only advice that matters. Spend less than you earn. Invest what you save. Stay patient. Everything else is noise.
这段视频以查理芒格的智慧口吻，深刻阐述了从零到第一个10万美元的艰难与必要性，强调这笔钱是通往真正财富的门票。芒格指出，起步阶段积累财富如同推巨石，困难重重，需要异于常人的耐心、节俭和长期投资纪律，而非追求捷径。他结合自身在大萧条时期的成长经历，揭示了金钱之于生存的重要性，以及摆脱对他人依赖、远离债务、避免攀比，嫉妒是最愚蠢的罪过，和过度自信的投资心态。视频进一步探讨了投资中的两大错误：过早卖出优质资产和持有劣质资产过久，其根源皆是缺乏耐心。芒格提倡坚守能力圈，承认无知，并强调财富增长的关键在于所有者思维而非打工者心态，即建立能为你工作的资产。他还分享了与巴菲特60年合作的成功秘诀：完全信任、优势互补、原则一致及理性争论。最终，芒格总结道：通往财富之路没有魔法，只有支出少于收入、投资差额、耐心等待复利这一枯燥而有效的原则。他强调，摆脱债务、远离内耗与愚人、保持独立性，是实现财务自由和内心平静的关键。